All right, it's midweek edition of the game day edition, the Wednesday edition, the Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. Glad to be with you here on a Wednesday as we move through the middle of the week. I'm glad it's the middle of the week. It's nice to finally be here at Hump Day, whatever you want to call it on Wednesday. 2 days down, 2 more to go, and we got this one day right here in the middle. And there's a college basketball game to watch tonight for Pitt. They're back in action after playing on Saturday. It was a weird way to phrase that. Pitt's got a game tonight, playing at Notre Dame, 7 o'clock tip-off in South Bend. We have a lot to talk about with regards to that game, a lot to talk about with the games that happened last night and how they impacted the ACC standings and what it means for Pitt going forward. And, of course, we have a lot to talk about this Panther team with 2 regular season games left to play, kind of what we're thinking about heading into tonight's game and going forward into that regular season finale at Miami. You know what we always ask you to do, of course, like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. The like button's down there. The subscribe is down here. Do that and you'll make us happy because it'll make those numbers look better. And let's be honest, it's just about the numbers. But there's something in it for you too. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on notifications, you can get an alert sent to your phone so you always know every time we post new content. We post a new Morning Pitt video every day, Monday through Friday. Or if we post an interview video or a post-game press conference or something like that, you'll know all of it. You'll know when it goes live, when it goes on our YouTube page, because you'll get a notification about it. Of course, when we do our live streams, like we'll do tonight after the Pitt Notre Dame game, I don't know what time that's going to start. 9:15, somewhere around there. I don't know an exact start time, but if you, it'll be somewhere around there, 15 or 20 minutes after the game ends. But if you have your notifications turned on for youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, you'll get an alert sent right to the phone. So you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to keep an eye on tweets or watch the message board or things like that. You just get it sent right to your phone. Hey, Panther-Lair.com is live now. Tune in for the post-game show. And then you can join the conversation. So make sure you do that tonight. I mean, subscribe now, turn on notifications now, but make sure you tune in tonight. We'll bump our regularly scheduled live show. Usually it's Wednesday nights at 8:30 for the Panther-Lair show. We'll push that back a little bit and just go live after the game and talk about what we saw out of Pitt's game at Notre Dame. And I said on the Morning Pitt yesterday and I think on Monday that we're pretty much going to do live post-game shows after every game from here on out. We'll do one tonight after the Notre Dame game. It just lines up because it's Wednesday. We're going to do one after Saturday's game at Miami, and then after all the ACC tournament games and all the NCAA tournament games, because I'm assuming Pitt makes it. I'm tired of all this bubble talk. I'm tired of them not being considered one of the top 25 teams in the country. I'm pretty sure they are, and I'm pretty sure they're not or should not be on the bubble. And so I'm going to talk about them as an NCAA tournament team. And I'm going to talk about how we're going to do post-game shows after the NCAA tournament games. We're going to have live post-game shows after every postseason game, plus these final 2 regular season games. And there are actually going to be some advertising opportunities out there. This is the last thing I'll say about this. But if you are a Pitt fan, you have a business, you'd like to spread the word to other Pitt fans, we're going to have some opportunities for you to get involved with our coverage of the postseason games, these post-game shows. And you can be a sponsor for the shows and get your message out. Our friend Chris Gates, we always talk about him on the live show, the live Panther-Lair shows. We always talk about him, and I think it's done well. It's drawn a lot of Pitt fans to his website and his service, so you can get that as well during our postseason, post-game shows, which I'm sure will be lively. So you can reach out to me on Twitter about that, and we will communicate, and I'll certainly tweet some things about that, drawing your attention to it. All right. Pitt's heading into final 2 games, first of the final 2 regular season games tonight at Notre Dame. And, the Panthers really could have used some help last night. Back up. Pitt doesn't need any help. That's the first thing we should put out there, which is a great position to be in. It's a position you want to be in. You don't need any help. That said, they could have gotten some help last night. Duke hosted NC State. Virginia hosted Clemson. If the road teams had won in either of those games, Pitt would have locked up a top 4 seed and a double bye in the ACC tournament. As we talk, and we have talked over the last few weeks, last month or so, there's sort of an ongoing ascending series of goals here. And one of the first goals that you can chip off is that top 4 finish, and a top 4 seed in the ACC tournament and a double bye, which means you don't play until Thursday. Some teams will start on Tuesday. Some will have a single bye and they'll start on Wednesday. Those top 4 teams don't play until Thursday, which means you only need to win 2 games and you're in the championship game. That's a heck of a place to be, and a heck of an advantage to start on Thursday, to get a couple extra days rest that maybe some of the other teams are not going to have. Now, there's something to be said for, those teams that have played the most days, they're in a rhythm and they're locked in. You might be cold. You might not be in your routine the way the other teams are. That's fine. Save that. And every now and then that does happen. For the most part, it's better to be that team with the double bye. And I think if you're Pitt, you want that double bye. You want as many extra days off as you can get. You've been playing a handful of guys, a whole lot of minutes, and you want as much extra time as possible. That's what the double bye will give you. Plus, it would just be cool to have Pitt as one of the top 4 teams. I mean, in this season of just ongoing successive, accomplishments and achievements, and hey, look at that. Look at what they're doing now. They're ranked. They're this. They're that. Seeing Pitt on that top 4 line, that double bye line, that not playing until Thursday line, it would just be another sort of notch on the belt. And so that's the first thing. And if NC State had won at Duke, if Clemson had won at Virginia, by the math, it would have worked out that Pitt would have clinched a spot in the top 4 seeds. Virginia held serve and Duke held serve as well. So neither of those things happened. Duke was even one that if Duke had lost on Saturday, if Pitt beat Syracuse on Saturday, which they did, and if Duke had lost to Virginia Tech, Pitt would have clinched a top 4 seed. They're really waiting for Duke because Duke has 6 losses. Pitt has 4 losses with 2 games left to play. Duke holding a head-to-head tiebreaker over Pitt really could have helped the Panthers' cause. But alas, it didn't happen. So you have to wait a little bit longer. Now, fortunately for Pitt, they control their own destiny. And as we talk about scenarios, as we talk about tiebreakers and head-to-head and mini conferences and record versus the next highest team and all this different stuff, the most important path here, the simplest path, the one that is probably the most fun to say, is that Pitt controls its own destiny. Win the next 2 games and you're the ACC regular season champions and you're the number 1 seed in the ACC tournament. Simple as that. I've got a paper full of all these different scenarios, and look at this. This is like a beautiful mind here. I should have had the whole wall covered behind me, written, in Sharpie and pen of all these different equations and matchups and records and head-to-head and, individual results and all these different things. But it all comes down to one simple thing. Beat Notre Dame in Miami, you're the champ. You're the number 1 seed. It's really that easy. Nobody else in the conference controls their destiny the way Pitt does, And, even Miami at this point with 5 losses doesn't control their own destiny for a regular season championship, an outright regular season championship. They can control their own destiny for a share of the ACC title. They control their own destiny. They can control their own destiny for the number 1 seed in the ACC tournament. But for that outright regular season championship, everyone else is waiting on Pitt. Pitt is the only team that controls its own destiny. Now, if they lose at Notre Dame tonight, that's a different story. Then they have 5 losses, just like Miami and just like Virginia. Clemson has 6. Duke has 6. So you're all bunched up with those top 5 again. And then you have shoot, realistically, if they lose tonight, they could, pending Saturday's result, fall all the way down to number 5 and fall out of the top 4 seeds, the double bye seeds. They need 1 win out of these last 2 games. They need a win tonight or a win on Saturday to clinch a top 4 finish. They need to beat Miami, most specifically, to clinch the number 1 seed. That's ultimately what it comes down to, is they need to beat Miami. That's the game that's going to decide this. And I keep repeating this over and over again. It's great that after all these years of the ACC trying to force Pitt Miami to be a relevant game in the season finale, regular season finale in football, they finally got it in basketball. I don't know if they intended it to be that way. I'm pretty sure they didn't think that Pitt Miami was going to be for all the Tostitos here at the end of the 2022-2023 regular season. But here we are, and that's the case. All right, so running it down real quick. Pitt's at 14-4. They've got Notre Dame tonight, Miami on Saturday. Miami's 14-5. They have nobody midweek. This is their off week. Congratulations, Miami. You have an off week at the final week of the season. And then they'll host Pitt on Saturday. Virginia beat Clemson last night, and they host Louisville in the finale. Virginia's 14-5, just like Miami. Clemson is 13-6. So, game back of those teams. They lost at Virginia last night, and then they host Notre Dame in the finale on Saturday. And then Duke is also 13-6 after they beat NC State last night. They're going to finish the regular season at North Carolina. So when you look down, these are the 5 teams in contention for those top 4 seeds. This is 5 teams in contention for the double bye spots. When we talk about those goals, that's the first one, is that double bye spot, like we said. And those are the 5 teams in contention. If Pitt loses tonight but wins on Saturday, they're the number 1 seed. If they win tonight, they clinch a top 4 spot with a chance to win on Saturday, beat Miami, not only get the number 1 seed, but getting an outright ACC championship. No co-champions, no shared titles, a straight up outright ACC regular season title. That's what they have to win those 2 games. They win those 2 games, they get it. They only win Miami game. They lose tonight and beat Miami, they share the championship. So it's a shared regular season title, but they still have the number 1 seed in the ACC tournament. Remember that, and that's kind of a relevant piece that keeps coming up and keeps being repeated, for good reason. The tiebreakers really only come into play when we're talking about the seedings for the ACC tournament. They're not going to use tiebreakers to establish a regular season champion. They'll go with co-champs. And so if Pitt loses at Miami, but they beat Notre Dame, they will share the they'll share the regular season title with Miami, because they would both be 15-5 at that point. And they would have, head to head, again, for the ACC tournament seeding, they would actually lose it. They would actually be the number 2 seed at 15-5. They would lose the tiebreaker to Miami because ultimately, I think because Miami beat Clemson and Pitt lost to Clemson. Actually, yeah, I think it goes down to that. It would work its way down to Pitt and Clemson. Now, we're assuming a few things about the results and the outcomes for Virginia, Clemson, and Duke in the games this Saturday. Virginia should beat Louisville at home. Clemson should beat Notre Dame at home. Duke at Carolina, that's a little dicier one. As our good friend Noah Heil says, you throw the record books out the window when Duke and Carolina are playing. And so I don't know what to predict in that game. Duke won against the Tar Heels earlier this season, a game at Cameron. Now they're going to play in Chapel Hill. I don't know what's going to happen in that game, but you would think that Virginia and Clemson will take care of business, and Virginia will get to 15-5 overall, and Clemson will get to 14-6. And that's how they'll finish the regular season. Again, Virginia potentially could end up in a 3-way tie, a shared championship, a co-championship, which might actually be a likely outcome. I mean, realistically, it would not be a surprise at all if Pitt wins tonight and gets 15-4, and then on Saturday, Virginia beats Louisville to get to 15-5, and Miami beats Pitt to improve Miami's record to 15-5 and drop Pitt to 15-5. So you have 3 15-5 teams. Miami emerges as the number 1 seed in that scenario. I think Pitt would be the number 2 seed out of that group because they would have a head-to-head advantage over Virginia. But all 3 would be co-champs. It wouldn't be a surprise at all to see that. That's probably, honestly, that's probably the most likely scenario, is that you end up with 3 15-5 teams. Now, that's not to say that surprises cannot happen. Virginia almost lost at Louisville, right? That was the game, I think 2 weeks ago. That was when they entered into that rough stretch. They just barely beat Louisville, and it looked like Louisville might pull off a stunner at home. And Virginia barely escaped. So, they are not, impervious. They're not susceptible to that kind of loss. They played with fire a little bit in that regard, and nearly lost, but ended up pulling out a victory. So it's possible. Clemson hosting Notre Dame. We'll talk about this in a second, but Clemson shouldn't lose to Notre Dame. It's just the reality. They should be 14-6. Pitt, I think, Jeff Capel always talks about taking it one game at a time. I think it's absolutely essential that Pitt wins this game tonight, for starters, just to keep that sixth loss off the table, that sixth ACC loss. You don't want to start getting into a situation where you're potentially playing tiebreakers with Clemson or playing tiebreakers with Duke, which if Pitt were to screw up and lose tonight at Notre Dame, now 6 losses is in play, with a very tough road trip to Miami on Saturday being the potential 6th loss. And if you do that, if you lose tonight and then you go down there and possibly, you lose to Miami to get a 6th loss, while Clemson beats Notre Dame to improve to 14-6, Clemson has the advantage. If Duke beats Carolina, Duke's got the head-to-head advantage over Pitt. A pair of losses, Pitt's the number 5 seed. Most likely. Assuming Clemson doesn't blow it against Notre Dame and Duke doesn't blow it against North Carolina. If either one of those teams loses, Clemson or Duke, then Pitt ends up, Pitt will stay in the top 4. But the easiest path is just to win. For all that I just talked about, everything I just said, just go out and win and start tonight at Notre Dame. And I've seen different ideas tossed around. This is a trap game. Pitt's got to watch out for this one. There's going to be a lot of emotion. Mike Bray's final game in South Bend, his final game coaching Notre Dame at home. This is just, you got to watch out for this game. It's a dangerous game. And look, every game is dangerous. There's no question about it. Pitt has 4 conference losses to show for it. At least 2 of them where they, found out that a team was more dangerous than maybe they gave them credit for, in the Virginia Tech and Florida State games, although I highly doubt that they overlooked Virginia Tech on the road. And I can't really believe that they would overlook Florida State either, but, Pitt knows well enough that anybody can beat anybody if you don't approach it with the necessary focus and effort and all of those things. All that being said, they should be able to beat Notre Dame. For all that you want to talk about, Notre Dame's a dangerous team. They've been close in games, and they have been close in a few of their games recently. The reality is, Notre Dame hasn't really gotten blown out this season. They played 18 conference games. They had lost to Florida State by 13. They lost to Boston College by 12. Everything else, I think, was single digits, at least just as I kind of glanced over their schedule. And they did have some games recently. They lost by 2 at Virginia. They lost by 4 at Duke. They lost by 3 at NC State. So this isn't a team. This isn't a team like Boston College or Louisville, who's just getting steamrolled, or Georgia Tech or something like that. Although Georgia Tech steamrolled Syracuse last night. Good golly, that Syracuse team is bad. They are really struggling. They have been bad. You know who lost to Syracuse though? Notre Dame. Did they lose to Syracuse twice? Let me look. They lost to Syracuse in South Bend, 62-61. So again, those close games. They lost at Syracuse, 78-73. So close losses, still losses. Notre Dame's 2-16 in the ACC. And Pitt has been pretty good at taking care of business against the bottom of the conference. I was looking, there are 7 teams with losing records in conference play this season so far at this point. Pitt has played those 7, the bottom 7 of the league. Well, 6 of those 7. The other one is Notre Dame. They have an 8-2 record. So it's a little troubling, actually, that they have those 2 losses in there, Florida State and Virginia Tech. It's a little troubling that they're 8-2 in those 10 games against, 6 of the 7 teams that have losing records in the conference right now. And same way with the bottom 4. Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, Louisville, Notre Dame is the other team in the bottom 4 of the conference, but out of Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, Louisville, Pitt is 5-1 or 4-1, excuse me. They've more or less taken care of business against the lowly conference teams. And the real bottom of the conference, Louisville, they've blown them out twice. Georgia Tech, they've beat them up really good. Syracuse, I would say, is getting to be part of the bottom of the conference, even if they're still 9-10. But from the ground up, Louisville, they beat them up. Georgia Tech, they beat them up. They lost to Virginia Tech and Florida State. Beat up on Boston College. Took care of business against Florida State the second time. Beat up on Syracuse. Those are the 7 teams that have losing records right now. Pitt's not perfect against those teams, and they certainly can be beat, but they shouldn't be. Notre Dame's not a great rebounding team. Notre Dame's not a great defensive team. Pitt should be able to score, and they shouldn't give up a ton on the rebounding end. And like, I get the idea about emotion, about Mike Bray's final game in South Bend, and it's going to be a passionate day and an emotional day, but this is also the 10th ACC game Notre Dame has played in South Bend during Mike Bray's final year at Notre Dame. Let me bring up their record in home conference games. They are 2-7. Okay? I understand watching out for potential traps. I understand watching out for those games that are going to jump up and bite you. I understand watching out for those teams that could surprise you. And I don't expect this to be a cakewalk. Notre Dame has played too many of these games close for this one to end up being a blowout. But Pitt should beat them. Pitt should be able to take care of business. And it might be by 5, and it might be by 8, and it might be by 1, or it might be by 12 or 13. But Pitt should be able to beat them. Get that 15th win, clinch a top 4 seed, and go into Miami and play for the ACC regular season championship. And at worst, a share of the ACC title. Because that's at stake too. And that's the other thing, when we talk about trap game, Pitt overlooking Notre Dame. I mean, there is something to play for in this game tonight. In addition to clinching the double bye in the ACC tournament. You win tonight, if you're Pitt, you win tonight and you clinch a share of the ACC regular season championship. At worst, you are co-champs with Miami and possibly Virginia. At worst, if you win tonight, because you cannot finish with more than 5 losses. So there's something to play for. And I'm curious about this with Jeff Capel because he's played it so straight all season long. Particularly January, February, when the team started really doing well and climbing the ranks in the ACC and looking like a contender in the conference and all that. And he's continued to toe the line. He said, we're just staying focused one game after another. We're not looking at those big picture things, not looking at standings or rankings or anything like that. I wonder if this is the game where he pushes that button or if he waits for the Miami game. But I might push that button tonight and say, look, guys, we got 2 games left. All right. You've worked really hard to get to this point. You've done a great job to get to this point. Tonight, we've got something to play for here. More than any other game this season, more than any of the first 29 games of the year, there's something tangible on the line in this game tonight. And it's a double bye. It's a double bye in the ACC tournament, which is not unimportant. And it's at least a share of the ACC regular season championship. You win tonight, you are at least a co-champ with a chance to be the king of the hill, the lone man at the top of the mountain. If you want to be that guy, that lone man at the top of the mountain, you have to win tonight to give yourself a chance to be it on Saturday. And I mean, losing tonight doesn't guarantee that they're only co-champs. They could lose tonight. They could beat Miami, and Virginia could lose, and then Pitt would, Pitt would be the only team with 5 losses. Everyone else have 6, and Pitt would be the outright regular season champion. But there's something tangible to play for tonight. And if I'm Jeff Capel, I might push that button. And if it works, and if you win, and you go into Miami looking to play for the regular season title, I might push that button twice, 3 times, or 4 times down in Coral Gables. But starts tonight in South Bend. Pitt's got to take care of business. I thought they found their groove again against Syracuse after a couple rocky games. I don't know if Notre Dame is going to be the pushover that Syracuse was. I don't know if they're going to be able to have a half like they did in the second half against Syracuse. But they've been in enough close games. They've been in enough tough games. They've been in enough tight games that they've had to win at the end. That if that's the way this one goes, and Notre Dame's had a bunch of those kind of games this season, I think this team is ready to play in that situation. And I think they're ready to win in that situation. We'll be live after the game to talk about Pitt potentially being co-champs. We'll see. But we'll be live after the game to talk about it tonight. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Hit that subscribe button right down there. And you can get a notification when we go live for the post-game show tonight right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We appreciate it very much. Enjoy the game tonight. Have a great Wednesday. And we'll talk to you after the game for the post-game show, and then we'll be back again tomorrow morning with the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.